Greetings from the No Labels, No Walls Festival. This is the second from last event in the whole festival, so let's enjoy it. Bambi Salcedo is a national and international recognized transgender Latina woman and is the president and CEO of Trans Latin Coalition, a national organization that focuses on addressing the issues of transgender Latins in the US. For this presentation, Bambi will provide the audience with learning and understanding about how the Trans Latin Coalition has been able to become a reputable and recognized advocacy organization across the United States with representation in 10 different states and cities. Join the conversation in Zoom during the event. Enjoy.
Welcome everybody.
That's interesting.
This is No Labels, No Walls Action Day, and we are so delighted to have Bambi Salcedo from Trans Latina Coalition with us today. No Labels, No Walls plus We Are One Festival offers over 100 events during 6 days. And now it's Saturday, and we saved the best for last. So welcome, Bambi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Primero que nada, yo quiero darle gracias a mi poder superior por darme la oportunidad de estar aquí con ustedes. Y también quiero honrar la presencia de todas las personas que nos acompañan hoy en día. I know that it was hard for some of you to understand what I just said, but it is a customary thing that I honor my creator for giving me the opportunity to be here with all of you. I also honor all the beautiful and amazing people who are joining us today. And I also want to thank so much No Borders, No Walls for giving me the opportunity to share space with all of you and to share my experience, strength, and hope. This session today is going to focus really about how is it that trans people are coming into their power and how we can build a transformational movement that will change the livelihood and the landscape of our community. As you may know, trans people has been marginalized, discriminated against, oppressed, and always being at the margins because of the institutional violence that we all experience in our society. We know that because of the invasion of the Americas and the colonization, from the beginning, the existence and the livelihood of trans people has always been to try to erase our existence and to devalue who we are as people and as human beings. Despite that, all the attempts to erase our existence and to devalue who we are as peoples, trans people continue to be resilient. Trans people continue to be strong and really claim our existence in this world. And that is why our organization exists. Our organization, the Trans Latino Coalition, well, first, let me just say that I am very privileged to be the president and the CEO of the Trans Latino Coalition. The Trans Latino Coalition is an organization that is based in Los Angeles, California, but it's a nationwide advocacy coalition that focuses in really uplift and support the life of trans and gender nonconforming individuals in the United States. We started in 2009 with this idea of how can we influence the structures that continue to marginalize trans, Latina, immigrant women at that time. At that time, there wasn't many organizations that would focus specifically to address the needs and issues of trans, Latina, immigrant women. And a group of us came together and started talking about what is it that we can do in order for us to influence the structures that continue to marginalize us. And our organization started as a volunteer group. We were doing amazing work. In fact, in 2012, for the first time in the history of the United States, our organization, in collaboration with the University of Minnesota, created the very first research project to find out what are the specific needs and issues of trans Latina immigrant women at that time. And through this research project, we were able to figure it out and understand a little bit more how is it that we were going to do the work that needed to be done in order to change the structures that continue to marginalize us. And our focus at the beginning was really to support trans women who were immigrants, who were living in the United States, but that were also detained in immigration detention camps. And our work was obviously to support trans people who were inside immigration detention. We would send them commissary money, we would write letters to them, and we would also do visitations. To date, we have representation in 10 different states in the United States, along with other cities, but we're based in Los Angeles, as I mentioned. And in 2015, our national group came together because as we were trying to organize and mobilize and empower trans people across the United States through the states where we have representation, we were also seeing that the very people who we were trying to organize did not have access to the basic needs that they were seeking, to the basic services that they were seeking, like housing, employment, even food. And through those efforts, our national organization decided that we also needed to move into doing service provision. And that's how the Center for Violence Prevention and Transgender Wellness came to be in Los Angeles. We are one of 3 trans-led organizations in Los Angeles that provide support to our community. But our organization is the only one that has a multiplicity of services specifically to support members of the transgender nonconforming community. We currently have, again, as I mentioned, multiple services. We have legal services supporting individuals through their immigration process. We have an anti-violence project supporting individuals who have been victims of violence. We have a reentry program supporting trans people who are getting released from jail, prison, or immigration detention. We also have a program that is funded by the City of West Hollywood to support trans people who are homeless in the City of West Hollywood. We also do HIV prevention, and all of the services that we provide are really with this idea of addressing the social needs of our community. And the HIV prevention services component that we have at our organization, it really is to connect trans people who are Latinx into pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP. And this idea is obviously PrEP is an HIV prevention method that people can have access to. But because of the lack of understanding from service providers, and because of the lack of accessibility that our communities have to healthcare services, we were granted a program for us to support trans people through this process and connect them into these clinics that provide these services. One of the critical components that we have at our organization also is policy. We believe that increasing our political power is one of the ways that we are going to be able to change the livelihood and the thoughts that our society has towards our community. And so when we formed this policy department at our organization, it was with this idea of us as trans people really crafting and creating a policy agenda that will support our community get into a better place within our society. And so we started this program 3 years ago. And the first year, again, as I mentioned, was to really develop this policy agenda that will help us, or that will serve as a map for us to be able to really get, if you will, to a better place, and for us to influence politically how legislators sees us. And through this process, today we have one bill specifically that has been crafted, created, and designed and mobilized all the way through specifically by trans and gender nonconforming people. We form a statewide coalition in the state of California of trans-led organizations that were critical into making sure that the language in the bill, that the partners that we had in this legislation were intentional about supporting us and obviously pushing this bill forward. And right now, I am happy to report that Assembly Bill 2218, which is the Transgender Health and Equity Fund, is at the governor's desk. So we are very optimistic that the governor is going to sign this historic bill. This is a historic bill for our community because, again, for the first time in the history of California, we learned that no other bill has been introduced into the legislation that has been designed and crafted specifically by trans and gender nonconforming people. And so this is how we are building our power. It's important for us to also understand where people are situated in 2020 in our society. And I mean people who are trans and gender nonconforming individuals. As we know, in 2020, trans people continue to be discriminated against while trying to access employment. We are pushed by our society, oftentimes by our families, into engage in the street economy. Sex work is very prominent in our community, particularly in trans women of color. And of course, sex work is one of the things that we do because we have to survive. But I think it's also important to recognize there are very intentional individuals who are also sex workers, who are trans, and who do this as their business. And it's important for us to recognize also and respect the choices of people. Nonetheless, trans people, particularly trans women of color, continue to be at the margins within our society. Accessibility to healthcare services is also one of the things that we struggle with, right? In 2017, our organization did a research project also highlighting the healthcare needs of trans Latinx individuals who live in Southern California. And what we found in this research project was that 99% of the individuals who participated in this project reported that they seek healthcare services only in emergency rooms, meaning that they go to seek the doctor when they're really sick. And so it's important for us to think about how we are going to build a healthy trans people, not just in California, but around the world. And we believe as an organization that if we are able to empower our community, even with those basic services that they may need, even if it's food that people don't have access to, we need to provide. Our organization provides daily lunch meals to trans people who are homeless and to trans people who just may want to come and have a hot meal at our organization. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, our dropping space, which is a safe space for trans people to come and be and simply exist and be safe and not afraid of being attacked simply because of who we are. Unfortunately, again, our dropping space is closed because of the pandemic. However, throughout this pandemic, our organization in Los Angeles continued to be opened to support those members of our community who do not have access to the things that they need. Again, even if it's food. And so we continue to provide hot meals to members of our community. We also provide clothes for those individuals who may need it. Again, many members of our community who are homeless come and seek our services. And we're very proud that we can be there to support them in these challenging times. And also, understanding where we are situated within 2020, but also what needs to be done in order for us to change the landscape and the livelihood of our peoples, we need to empower our community as well. And we need to empower our community starting providing those basic things that people need. Many people think that because we are in the media nowadays, that because we get highlighted in magazines, that because there are TV shows that are of trans people, that our social conditions are resolved. And that is a lie. That is not true. We continue to struggle as people. And that's why it's always important for me to acknowledge my privilege as a trans person, as a trans woman who is an immigrant, who is undocumented, who has survived many different challenges in our society. I am one of those who have survived homelessness, who have survived sex work, who have survived sexual assaults, who have survived incarceration. I spent about 14 years of my life in the state penitentiary here in California. I also have been incarcerated in immigration detention. And so for me, I feel like it's my responsibility because I have this privilege to be situated at a different place than other members of my community. Luckily, I do have a roof over my head. I have one of the most amazing jobs that anyone can imagine, being the leader of a reputable national organization that has been influential in supporting to move forth the trans movement in the United States. And so for me, I feel that it is my responsibility to do whatever I can to make sure that we as a community get to a better place within our society. And I also have to say that although we are a reputable organization and that we have gained so many things, right? Again, I think it's important that we understand that trans people are still behind in many aspects. And just to give you an idea, if we can compare where the gay and lesbian community is nowadays in comparison to the trans community or the trans movement, I can honestly say that trans people and the trans movement is about 40 years behind legislatively, academically, economically, you name it. And so that's why it's important that we continue to organize, that we continue to mobilize, that we continue to empower ourselves, and that we continue to empower members of our community. Because it seems that only us are the ones who have the solution for our issues. Unfortunately, there have been many movements throughout the history of the United States and throughout the history around the world. But unfortunately, trans people have not been included in many of those movements. And I can mention movements, but I don't think that's important. I think what is important today is that we figured out how we are going to continue to move forward and make sure that we claim our existence in our society. I also want to say that the work that we have done as an organization, and to be honest, how the trans movement have been able to move forward is because of the support and the collaboration of amazing and beautiful organizations and people, right? They say that people are organizations and organizations are people. And so it is because of the collaboration that we have built from individuals who are well-intended, who understand, and who want to create those changes that need to happen for our community to be at a better place. And so it's important that we recognize those individuals. But I think it's also important that we understand that there needs to be an intentional investment in the lives of trans people. There was a report that was released on March 30th of this year by a prominent organization that is called Funders for LGBTQ Issues. And in this report, it was highlighted that in the philanthropic world or in the private funding, that 4 cents out of every $100 were invested in trans-led organizations. Mind you, 5 years ago, there wasn't many trans-led organizations. And although we as an organization existed, we were not getting any funding. We started getting funding in January of 2016. Our very first grant that we got was from the Elton John AIDS Foundation that gave us $75,000 to support trans women who were getting released from immigration detention. And now I am happy to report that there's 14 trans people working at our organization. We have 5 subcontractors that support our organization as well. And we also have other individuals who are volunteers to our organization who continue to support the work that we're doing. But I want to say that there's an intentional investment that needs to happen to support trans lives. So we need to invest in trans lives. Philanthropy needs to step up and to make sure that there is investment in the development of the infrastructure of trans-led organizations. That there's an investment into supporting healing practices for our community. As we know, those of us who have been survivors of multiple challenges and so horrible experiences have continued to experience PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, for those of you who don't understand. And there's so many challenges and so many trauma that we have overcome, but many members of our community need to heal from all of those things. And I believe it's the responsibility of our society to make sure that there is an intentional investment, both from the philanthropic world, but also from the governmental world, to make sure that we change the landscape of our community. One of the things that we have to also understand is that we have to mean what we say and say what we mean. And what I'm saying is that there are many people within our society that think that just by posting something in social media saying that, yes, I support you, right? That's great. And we thank you. But that's not enough. We need for people to step up and be intentional and educate themselves and understand that words are not the solution. We need to put actions into the words that we say. And that's why I'm asking both, again, philanthropy and the government to really support the lives of trans people.
Bambi?
Say that. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you, talking about collaborations, and also support, like you're saying, what collaborations would you like to see, not just with philanthropy, but with the NGOs, with working on different topics? Like where do you feel the most, because there's so many issues you covered homelessness, incarceration, immigration, you name it. What besides just the financial side, what connections would you like to see transgender community be more tight, I guess, with other groups fighting for similar issues that you're fighting for?
Well, I mean, I think we have to understand that, the money is power, right? And so we also have to invest in the leadership of trans people, right? And so money needs to be invested in trans lives, but there's definitely ways that other people can support trans people, right? For instance, at our organization, we receive donations from people, like clothes and other things, right? And those things we provide to people, right? But there are many different, there are different trans-led groups across the world, so we need to support them. And I don't know what, the specific needs are, because obviously, the needs change based on locality, right? But one of the things that I do want to say that is often important and that needs to happen is, for instance, if people have connections to foundations. Unfortunately, most foundations work only by invitation, right? Like you can apply to their funding if it's by invitation only, right? And so if people have connections, make those connections, make those introductions. But also, many of us don't have the skills to even write a grant, for instance, right? I am lucky that I am also an academic. I received a master's degree in Latino studies here in Los Angeles. And so I do have, the ability to write a little bit, right? I mean, also, like English is my second language. And so there's also challenges with that, right? And so I'm not going to say that I am the best at writing a grant because I am not, but I do get support. And so there are individuals and academics, for instance, who have that ability, who can support translator organizations into seeking the funding that they need. Also, people can volunteer their time. I mentioned that there needs to be an investment in the development of the infrastructure of translator organizations, right? If you have the ability to donate your time and support translator organizations into doing a strategic plan, do that, because we need that. We need a roadmap for us to know what is it that is going to make our organizations be sustainable and long term, right? I know that for a fact that our organization is not going to be one that comes and goes, right? And so that's why leadership development is important to us, because we need to be able to transfer power at some point, right? Like the same people cannot be in power all the time. And so that's why it's important that also we empower young individuals, right? And we listen to young individuals, and in this case, young trans individuals, right? Because they're the ones who are going to shape our movement, to be honest with you.
And I know, like, for me personally, our group, Streamer Laboratory, went into the Men's Central Jail, which has actually a segmented K6B unit, which most jails and certainly most prisons do not. But so that's where I finally started to really meet people who are transgender, and got to know them. And it was just a revolutionary experience for me personally. And that being said, I don't know I guess the best way to say it is, I don't know how I would be able, I would have met so many people who are transgender without doing the work that that we have done. So that's why I want to kind of open it up to maybe Marcus and Daniel, because do you have any, maybe this is the first time also for people listening in, if it's not so late in Europe, hearing about transgender issues specifically in America. Is there any questions for Bambi that you have about her work, about, yeah.
Bambi, I was really inspired by reading about the Trans Latina Coalition, and I was thinking of your programs of this community-led campaigns and building new leadership. These are the skills that are needed here in Finland too. So could you tell a little bit about your community-led campaigns? How can we be more effective in campaigning, and what kind of experiences have you had?
Well, like I said, needs and issues vary in different localities, right? But if I can just send a message to my siblings who are people of trans and gender nonconforming experience, I would say that please, 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 please know and understand your power. Know and understand that you as an individual have power, and that we as a community have power. And what we need to do is, first come together. I'm sure that there's amazing work happening in Finland. I have no doubt about that. That is led by trans people. But those of you who want to be involved and who want to create your own thing to support our people, you can, right? And the first thing that we need to do is just think about how we're going to make that happen, and develop a plan and talk to people who will support your idea and your dream. And collectively, right, you can achieve what you want. And it could be anything, right? I mean, there's many people who are coming into their power through the arts, for instance, right? Being trans should not be the exception, right? In fact, I believe that it's a gift, right? If we think about how we celebrated, how we were celebrated in indigenous communities, and even today we're still celebrated in indigenous communities. You know, we are sacred people. It's just that people don't understand that. And because people have influenced the way we think and the way our society has formed, we forgot that. But if we come to believe, and if we come to understand that we as people can make the difference, not just in ourselves, but in the world, we can make things happen the way we want for them to happen. But we need to be organized, we need to be strategic, and we need to also be determined, right? Don't give up on your dreams, don't give up on yourself, and don't give up on your people.
Yes, absolutely. And then Daniel, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do. Thanks a lot for the talk. It was really interesting. I actually have a friend who's trans, and since they went through the change, they're so much happier now, I've got to say. And I just wondered, I know there's a high rate of sort of attempted suicide and suicide for adolescent trans people. So what do you think, how can this change, and how can people, especially young people, be helped in a better way?
It was a little hard for me to understand, but I think I got something related to young people and how can we help them. Yes.
So people, there's quite a high rate of suicide attempts for adolescents, trans people, right? So how can this change? You know, it can't go on like that, can it? So, because obviously it's a contentious issue, isn't it? With things such as puberty blockers and things like this. So what do you think, in your experience, could help the issue?
Yeah, you know, I had the privilege and the honor to work at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, which has an amazing trans program, specifically supporting young trans and gender nonconforming youth and also children now. And it is true, you know, many young people obviously feel that they cannot be themselves because of not just the messages that we hear in our society, but because of the actions of people who live in our society, right? Who, you know, for young people, oftentimes it starts in school. And, you know, even for young people, it starts at home, right? Unfortunately, many family members cannot even comprehend or understand who we are, right? And I think what influenced so much is, you know, this binary system that we have been brainwashed to believe, right? And this also, you know, this binary system of, you know, really, which is attached to sex, right? Like whatever genitals you have is who you are supposed to be, and that's not necessarily true, right? Or this notion of, you know, boys are blue or wear blue and girls wear pink, right? All of those things influence how people in our society think, right? And even, you know, religious institutions have influenced so much on how we think, right? And therefore, that also has translated into our families to go with those beliefs that, again, in my opinion, people have been brainwashed, right? Um, the truth is that again, as I mentioned at the beginning, right, trans people have existence forever, right? It's just that this sort of like Western type mentality, right, that has pushed to really erase our existence. Um, but the truth is that the people need to learn what unconditional love is,
Mm.
right? When it comes to our sons or daughters, to when they try to express innocently, right, who they are, when they're children, right? I mean, people have to understand child development, right? We know that children, when they're very young, they express who they are at a very young age, but because of how we have influence and to think, then we put all of those things in our children. And then when children try to come to be themselves, then they get rejected. Then they get thrown out on the streets. And then obviously those individuals don't understand what unconditional love is, right? Because when someone comes out or like try to express themselves, then there's a condition, right? If you are this way, then I'll love you. If you are this way, I will not love you, right? And so people need to really understand the true meaning of love and further what unconditional love is. Um, but also, I think, we need to really transform hospitals and daycare systems and even the schools, right? We know that many hospitals are influenced by religious institutions, right? Or are led by religious institutions. And so that's how they function, right? And so, like, we just need to let people be who they are. We need to let people come to terms to know who they are and support them through those processes. Because the truth is, if we don't have this core love, right, which is the foundation of any child, right, the love of their parents, then that's how we start to start thinking like, if I'm getting this from my family, from my parents, those who are supposed to love me and protect me unconditionally, what am I supposed to expect from the outside world, right? And to be honest, it's a lot for many of us, right? I mean, trans women specifically, right, are murdered at a high rates. Every year around the world, around 400 to 500 people, mostly trans women of color, are murdered around the world. In the United States, so far there has been 26 people who have been murdered in the United States. The vast majority trans women of color. And so there's a reason why we experience this violence, right? There's the reason why they say that we as trans women, when we step into the streets, that we walk with targets on our backs. And that is because of the ignorance that continue to exist in the world about who trans people are.
And Bambi, I wanna follow up about this network. So No Labels, No Walls. What we're trying to do is create a space where people and from all backgrounds can talk together and create together. So I guess that being said, it's for everybody. Like this festival was for everybody, and was created by so many people from so many backgrounds. is there a need? Do you personally, does your organization have a need to keep to have a network like this? And what connections, because this is an international network, would you like to make? Because we have Action Mondays. Hopefully, we're going to do more festivals. What connections are you looking for, maybe through this network that we all can help you with?
Um, well, again, thank you so much for No Borders, No Walls for the opportunity to be here. And I also want to apologize because I do talk a lot, but I am very passionate about, who I am and what I do and what needs to happen in our community. And I know that at the beginning I was just like blobbing away, but I wanted to make sure that people get the point. Um, but what I do want to say, and thank you for that question, Michael. What I do want to say is that I don't just want to advocate for our organization, right? Again, there are multiple trans-led organizations around the world, around the United States, that could also get or need to get the support, right, in order for all of us to thrive, right? I mean, having a network and having people in a coalition is great, right? But even within those groups, right, there needs to be education, right? If we are intentional about the work that we're doing, then we need to be inclusive and understand, right? And eliminate all of those stereotypes and all of those anti-trans rhetoric that we still have in the back of our minds, and really see people as people, right? Not just trans people, but also Black folks, Indigenous folks, you know what I mean? Like just the spectrum, right? I think I am hopeful, that we can transform the world in which we all live, right? And to be completely honest, I, even though I may not get to see the world that I would like to see, I know that I am contributing to that world. And I hope that I can influence, and I can plant the seed for other people to really start thinking, and not just thinking, but taking action in what needs to happen in order to transform our world. And I think if we are able to open our hearts and our minds, we are going to be able to transform the world and have a better world for all of us.
So maybe what we can do as a network, and if you're interested, is maybe we can reach out to some international or even national trans groups and have a dialogue about maybe stigma, education, all of those things that you touched upon for future, like Action Monday that we do, or maybe something like that where like a kind of a discussion with with yeah with different groups and different organizations. Would that be something that would be helpful?
I think a discussion is definitely a start, but I think there's multiple things that need to happen. A discussion is definitely start, but I would say if that's something that this coalition wants to do, then there needs to be an intention behind it, right? There needs to be an intentionality and not just a discussion. There needs to be, what is next, right? There needs, I would even say, formulate a plan, right, about how this coalition can influence to change, you know, yeah, our society, to transform our society in some ways.
So if let's say in 4 weeks we said Trans Latina Coalition, Bambi, if you can design what you would like an hour long format, however you want to design it, and then we would then, hopefully along with yourself, reaches out to other organizations, and we're sort of just facilitators of this with our people that we work with right now and a part of our group, which you are as well. Would that be something that would sound okay with you?
Like I said, right? This is definitely start, and just
Okay.
to be completely transparent and honest, right? My agenda is super full, right? I'm also part of other coalitions, right? Like right now, there's talks about defunding the police and all of that. So I'm involved in multiple groups here locally and nationally. We're actually organizing a campaign to invest, which is hashtag invest in trans lives, right? To really, like, I want to say hold accountable the philanthropic world into investing in trans lives. Um, and to be honest with you, like doing campaigns takes a lot of time in addition to my work. So I don't want to say no, but I want to make sure that, if I'm committing to something, that I'm fully in it, right? I also want to say that there are other people who I can tap into that could, support with this effort. But then again, I want to make sure that whoever comes on board, whoever I'm bringing on board, that they are going to feel included and they're going to be part of the process fully.
Thank you, Bambi. I was just thinking about these future leaders. So this is also a platform where these future leaders can come together with other future leaders and to bring about a new network for the future. So about this, I agree with you that there has to be a goal. So what would be the 1 to 3 next steps? What is the positive future that we could build together?
The positive future. Well, the future, and again, the world that I would like to live in is for me to live in a world that I'm not afraid any longer to be who I am, right? That I am not afraid as I walk out of my home that I can potentially be killed today, that I am free to live and to exist just as I am. And I'm sure that's the same for many members of my community. Now, when we get there, and how we will get there is when our society see us as the people that we are. When we eliminate all of those unfortunate thoughts that people have about us, when people see us as productive members of society, because we are. Unfortunately, many members of our community are not, because that's where society has put us, right? That's how, the media thinks of us. Or that's how the media portrayed us, for us to be. And therefore, people think of us as crazy, as men who are on skirts. And, you know what I mean? Like, and also, like, women also, you know what I mean? Like, many women, I've been in women's circles to where they don't think trans women are women, right? And so we need to think also about like this concept of womanhood, right? I mean, being a woman doesn't mean that one needs to have a vagina, for instance, right? Or that one needs to reproduce or create or procreate children. I mean, being a woman is more than that, right? And so there's a lot of work that needs to happen. Now, how we are going to be able to change minds and hearts, I believe is possible, but there's, this cultural transformation that needs to happen. And in order to transform the culture, people need to be invested into allocating resources into doing that work. So the short answer, I don't know it, but we can build a strategy into making sure that little by little that changes. You know, like our government, the like institutional violence is one of the things that is so prominent against trans people, right? I mean, here in the United States, that the Trump administration, just in June, he's tried to revert, accessibility for healthcare for LGBTQ people, and so these are the things that happen, right? Like when those powerful institutions send messages that say that our lives are not valuable, then people, that's what they think, that we're not valuable.
I mean, we have 1 minute, and I want to make sure we give the last word. So, last words. What do you want to say to everybody?
Oh my goodness. So, well, I want to say first and foremost, thank you to all of you who were able to tune in and who are sharing your time with us and who are sharing space with all of us. I'm just so grateful and honored that I get to participate in this forum. And thank you so much, No Labels, No Walls, for the opportunity to share my experience and hope with all of you. And I hope that all of us who are watching this session and who are going to be sharing this session with other people, that we can see the humanity in one another. And that if we are able to do that, when we are able to do that, then we collectively will transform the world. And I believe it's possible. We just need to put our minds and our hearts into it and obviously take action to make our dream a reality. So thank you again so much for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to continued collaboration and to transform the culture that we all live in. Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much, Bambi Salcido. Please check out Trans Latina Coalition, connect and support. And this is No Labels, No Walls, plus We Are One Festival 2020. Thank you, Bambi. Let's continue with Daniel. The final event in this festival is Music from Scotland. And then we party all night with Stay Up Late campaign. Goodbye.
Thank you.